Hey guys, OGalbina here, bringing you guys another tier list video. Yes, they are back. For those of you who are new subs to the channel or new people viewing this video, my name's Owen. I play competitive Pokemon Draft League predominantly in the singles format, which is a counter team format where you draft Pokemon, play against each other, all that stuff. There's plenty of videos on my channel describing the exact format if you're not familiar, but for those of you who are, today we're going to bring back tier list videos where I'm going to rank each and every one of the water types in Paldea decks currently on their draft league viability. Now, this isn't necessarily on how high point value they are, because let's say something like Iron Bundle is obviously very high up, but say I don't think it offers much value for the slot that it is. Obviously, I don't think that, but say I didn't, I might put it in C tier, and I also might take, let's say, Quillfish and put it in S tier, because I think for the point value that it's typically at, it'd be a little bit higher. So that's going to be kind of how we rank these things. I'm going to be ranking every one of these Pokemon that are not bannable in the Draft League tier. So no Arceus, no Palkia, basically. I think those are the only banned mons. And yeah, if you guys do enjoy today's tier list discussion, be sure to drop a like on the video, as well as subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to, man, I was about to say 2,000, 3,000 subs. Thank you guys so much for helping us hit 2,000. If you want to help me out in hitting 3,000 by the end of the year, I'd really appreciate if you drop that sub. Alrighty, with that being said, we can jump on into it with a Pokemon that I quite literally just don't know how to rank. It's Golduck. Now, Golduck isn't terrible. When it comes to Rain and Paldea decks, there's not a lot of options. You really have this, you have Dreadnought, and you have Floatzel. And this is definitely the worst of the three, so I think because of that, we'll put it in D tier. But it is somewhat anti-weather. Maybe it could be okay against Sun with Cloud9, or be a niche Rain Sweeper on your own right. Decent enough coverage between Water and Ice, and then I believe Psychic as well is really going to be all that it has. But, you know, that does hit some teams very hard. Decent enough speed tier. I'm going to move a calc over here just so I can take a look at things. But I guess decent enough speed tier in 85, and it can nasty plot up, has Grass Knot for opposing waters. It's just, there's not much of a reason to ever draft Golduck over any of the other Rain Sweepers, even though there's not really that many good Rain Sweepers in this meta. But there's really no reason to draft it over anything else, so yeah. Next up, we have our first NFE Pokemon in Slowpoke. Slowpoke, we're going to put at the bottom of D here. Not to say that it's not draftable. You definitely can with Eviolite. It has passable bulk, but it's knock fodder. It's very passive, but it can function as that, you know, slow regen pivot. It can throw off some Thunder Waves, things like that. Pokemon like this would be a little bit more valuable in Generation 8 or prior, when it had access to Teleport, when it had access to Scald for momentum and burning purposes. Now it's kind of a sitting duck, so I don't have to explain that one, though, too much, I don't think. So it's going to go down here in D tier. Next up, though, we do indeed have Slowbro. Now, a lot of people actually aren't big on Slowbro this gen, for the aforementioned reasons, in it losing Scald and it losing Teleport. Those are two huge nerfs, as well as a Slack Off nerf, it losing a bunch of its recovery option, or at least the PP for its recovery option. So a lot of people aren't big on Slowbro. I personally still think it's pretty darn incredible. I'm going to put it in high B for now, but it might end up moving up to A tier, considering the... No, I'm going to put it in A tier. I think Slowbro is an A tier Pokemon still. It's still incredibly on the physically defensive side. It has the best ability in Draft League in Regenerator. Still has incredible coverage. It can Calm Mind and Nasty Plot. Still gets Slack Off. Still gets Trick Room. Great with Rocky Helmet. Incredible with Boots. Really solid with an AV as well, kind of making up for its middling special defense stat, as well as having that meaty defense stat. And can be a great Pokemon and a great glue piece. Incredible physically defensive wall. So I definitely think it's worth your time here in A tier. It's probably one of the lower end A tier mons, but definitely very solid nonetheless. Next up, though, we have Cloyster. I'm actually gonna have to put my... Oop, that's Basculin. We'll wait for you. I'm actually gonna have to put Cloyster in C tier. Now, in Generation 8, I'd probably put it in B tier, actually, because offensively, it's pretty good with Shell Smash plus Skill Link with Rock Blast, Icicle Spear, but it's missing one of those coverage moves that I had before in Pin Missile, which helped it in like niche matchups where it needed to hit things like Slowbro, the aforementioned, or Slow King, and things like that. The bug coverage is actually pretty nice in some instances. Not the biggest nerf in the world, but there are two others that are huge in losing Rapid Spin and Explosion, which were two of Cloyster's biggest tools, to be completely honest. Rapid Spin allowed it to function as, like, you know, a more physically defensive pivot / hazard remover, as well as being a spiker in its own right. It's a very solid spiker at that. and T-Spiker, but also losing Boom really took away like the HO Focus Sash Hazard lead set, or even Shell Smash Explosion sets where you could Shell Smash up, kill something that takes a +2 hit comes in, then you +2 Boom and they're gone. So it's really, really unfortunate those two moves that it lost. I drafted it recently thinking it still had those two moves like a couple months ago. It didn't, and it really, really limited how I could actually use this Pokemon. It was pretty brutal, so yeah. Next up, we have Tauros, Paldea, Aqua. I'm going to go ahead and put this guy over here in B tier. Really, really solid Pokemon, honestly. I thought these guys were going to be much worse than they were, but with its solid bulk, base, 100 its speed, I believe it is, Intim as an ability, access to bulk up and Trailblaze to boost speed, Aqua Jet for priority, Water Fighting is a pretty incredible stab combination as well, Raging Bull to get rid of screens. It's a pretty solid middle tier water. I think it lends a little bit more offensively, but it's still solid nonetheless, so I think it's definitely worth a B tier slot here. Then we have Gyarados. I'm going to go ahead and put Gyara in B tier. Lost power up this generation. It is a very solid Terra Captain in the Draft League format. I think if you can use like lower tier Terra Captains, very solid with like Terra Ground, Terra Flying, even Terra Grass, whatever it might be. I think this Pokemon is pretty solid in that regards. DD plus Intim, obviously finding setup opportunities, or Moxie to clean through teams. Heavy duty boots like defensive sets as well are very, very solid. And, having pretty incredible bulk, maybe like a Rest Talk physically defensive variant can help out with some scary offensive fires or even scary offensive waters in that regard. So I think, especially if you can make it your Terra Captain, Gyarados is actually a pretty slept on Pokemon for its price point. Not a lot of people end up drafting it, so yeah. Next up, we have Vaporeon. I'm going to go ahead and put Vaporeon also in C tier right over here. Vapo's, it's pretty tough, man. It lost Scald, which is one of its main ways of really chipping things down. It lost by getting burns and things like that. And it also lost Flip Turn as a means of momentum, attacking momentum that can't be taunted. Pretty unfortunate. It can baton pass out, and most leagues do allow dry pass. But if your league doesn't allow dry pass, it just doesn't have removal anymore, which is also pretty tough. It's just a bit passive, in my opinion, and Vapo's always been a bit passive, but losing a move like Scald that really helped it wear down and be a big, big nuisance to a lot of things that checked it, makes it pretty tough to use, in my opinion. It did, and it lost Toxic as well, which all of these Pokemon pretty much did. It is worth noting that it did get Calm Mind, and I think like Calm Mind Vapos are still very, very viable. And it's a really cool set, and I think if you give Calm Mind, Vapo Calm Mind in Gen 8, it would be very good. But yeah, as it stands, I'm not a big Vaporeon fan. I think it's loss of Scald and Toxic were huge nerfs. Oh, excuse me. All right, we're on in Generation 2, and first up is Azumarill, and I'm actually going to put Azumarill up here in S tier. Now, it's not even for the reason that it's a water. It's more so for the reason that I think, honest to God, this is a hot take, and I just yell this from the mountaintops. I think that Azumarill is the best fairy type in the format, and inherently a very valuable water fairy. Water fairy is an incredible defensive typing, as well as offensive on a Pokemon with huge power and great coverage and priority and belly drum and be choice band. But Assault Vest variants and Rest Talk physically defensive and Specialty Talk defensive variants are incredible in this game. If you look at the top tier of the the draft board, the top tier Pokemon of that board, it checks a good majority of them, like very, very, very convincingly and well. So I think I have to put Azumarill at the top right here, especially considering that fairy type role that it fills is so important. I know there's a water type tier list, but I'm ranking these Pokemon, not the rules as waters necessarily. And we have Quagsire, who saw some pretty big buffs this gen. It lost Scald and nerfed, it has a nerf recover, but it got access to Rock Spikes and T-Spikes, which are all incredible tools for this Pokemon. It always wanted the ability to set up hazards, and now it can do so pretty darn reliably. Unaware is great. Water Absorb is always great, especially with a lot of the strong waters that are in this format. Really makes you think twice, and Quags overall a really solid bulky water. I think I definitely got to put it here in B tier. Probably above Paldea and Tauros, for me personally. Next up is Slowking. Slowking's going in S tier too, man. So Slowbro obviously lost its momentum in Teleport. And Slowking lost Teleport too, but it did gain access to Chilly Reception, which isn't negative priority like Teleport, but you're typically so slow that it's always going to be like, you going last with your Chilly Reception anyways, so that's not that big of a nerf. Plus, you're setting up the snow now, which really allows it to facilitate good offensive ice types and find them either setup opportunities or just give them a buff defense and a free switch in, whether that be Iron Bundle or Baxcalibur. Slowking is a really, really cool core with how bulky Baxcalibur can be. So that on top of, again, regen best ability in the game, great coverage, recovery, Calm Mind, Nasty Plot, Trick Room, all these things. Slowking's an incredible bulky water, and I definitely recommend you try it out. Next up, we have Quillfish. I think I gotta put Quillfish here at the top of C tier. It's debatably in B tier, though. I definitely really enjoy this Pokemon, man. I think it's pretty incredible, whether it be that as a grounded poison, that spikes and T-spikes there, that Intim Mon, just that overall general nuisance, and even as a niche rain dance, like, you know, Swift Swim Sweeper, it can be pretty solid, and it fills a lot of roles for a pretty cheap price, so you can't lose much. Next up, we have Delibird, who's not a water type. I think Liv made me this tier list, so I appreciate it for that. But Delibird is not a water type, as much as I do like him. He's a cool guy. Next up, I think another one of my hot takes. I'm putting Pelly in C tier, just because I think Rain is so bad this gen. I really think it's bad. Dreadnought, Floatzel are the best you can offer me, is what you're telling me. And I'm not drafting those, so I'm not drafting Pelipper, just because they're simply better bulky waters. I mean, it can still function. I think, you know, Rain is something that your opponents are going to have to prep for, but I think Rain itself is really bad this generation. So I can't justify putting it higher, personally. I just can't do it. But yeah. Next up, we have Wishcash. Yeah, my boy's going in D tier. He gets to be with Golduck. He got Rocks and Spikes this gen. I don't know if he had either of those before, because I've never drafted a Wishcash, but he has both of those now, which makes him much more viable, which is definitely really cool. Okay. Next up, we have our Floatzel here. I think Floatzel, it has to go in C tier above Golduck, who is in D tier, simply because it's probably the best Rain Dance or Rain Team abuser in the format. And like getting like a Terra Floatzel plus Pelipper and like Terra watering it and just clicking Wave Crash or something like that can be really strong and terrifying. So I don't know, I feel like it's at least for C tier because of that, and like a solid speed tier, I suppose. It should have Flip Turn though. If it had Flip Turn, it'd be a lot better. Okay, next up, what do we have? We have Gastrodon. We're gonna go ahead and put Gastrodon B tier. It basically kind of does what Quag does, but better defensively. Quag has Unaware, which Gastrodon doesn't have. Gastrodon has Storm Drain instead of Water Absorb, but Gastro was still incredibly solid. Better defensively, has Recovery, got Rocks and Spikes. I don't think it got T-Spikes, got Rocks and Spikes, and can be really solid offensively too, and is a big nuisance. I am more annoyed when I'm playing a Gastrodon than I am when I'm playing a Quagsire. It's also lighter for all of the grass knots that might come your way from mixed mods, things like that, whereas Quagsire is a big chunky boy, and he kind of gets blown up. Okay, next up, I'm just going to move these down here so they don't mess with me. I think these are the last Ubers that we have to worry about. Yeah, there we go. Next up, we have Lumineon. I'm going to go ahead and put him in D tier. I'm not explaining why Lumineon sucks. It's terrible. Yes, I said it's terrible, John. I'll fight you over it. Next up, we have Rotom Hwash. We're going to go ahead and put an A tier. Big fall from grace. Generation 8, Rotom's probably an S tier for me in this list, looking at these Pokemon, but losing Defog and Painful is pretty tough. Now, I do think that Rotom is an incredible Pokemon still. It's dual stat plus Levitate has, you know, been a tried and true, you know, staple for years for a reason. But it's obviously much worse this gen, and I think I would always rather have Slowking Azu over Rotom unless my team really needed that Volt momentum. I think those Pokemon are just much better. Okay, next up we have Samurott and Hisuian Samurott. I'm actually going to tier these guys at the same time, not together. Samurott, I'll go ahead and put in C tier. Decent enough Pokemon. Then we'll just talk about Hisuian Samurott, who hot take, this borderline could be an A tier Pokemon. It's top of B, lower A. It has an attacking move, for those of you who don't know. It does everything that Samurott does, but with an additional dark typing, and has an attacking move called Ceaseless Edge, which is a dark type move, no immunities, 95% accurate, so it can miss sometimes, but also sets up spikes, on top of having Sharpness, plus that move, which is boosted by it, Razor Shell, which is boosted by it, and Sacred Sword, which is boosted by it, plus Swords Dance, plus Aqua Jet, plus Passable Bulk. This Pokemon is going to be very strong. For a Pokemon with very middling stats, it's going to be very strong. I'm definitely pretty juiced about this guy. I think he's cool. I really want to try out. Samurott does what he does, just worse, and can be more of a mixed attacker, but we're not going to talk too much about him. Basculins, they're all okay as like low tier adaptability, hard hitting mons, but they're nothing special, nothing I would particularly recommend drafting. Then go here in D tier above Golduck. That's about it. And there are niche differences between them and their move pools and things like that, but I'm not gonna talk about it. Yeah. Next up we have this thing is going at the bottom of C tier. Now, I've never been a big Aloe fan. I personally have always found it very passive. Just kind of a fat blob that sucks momentum, which, to be fair, I'm not very good at using it. But now in Generation 9, I definitely think it's not great. Losing access to Scald and Toxic and maybe Knockoff. I'm not 100% sure. But losing access to those ways makes this Pokemon incredibly passive and very exploitable. And easy to put in a bad position, in all honesty. It's really good against newer players, but other than that, not great. Next up, we have Frogadier. I'm actually going to go ahead and put Frogadier right here behind Whiscash. Does what this next Pokemon does, but just much worse and a little bit more kind of dedicated to those lead hazard sets. But next up, we have Greninja, who's going to go up here in S tier for me. I love... Now, this is Protein Greninja we're talking about. Battle Bond, I don't have much of a frame of reference because it hasn't really been allowed anywhere I'm playing because it's not currently released in Scarlet and Violet. And Battle Bond works a little bit differently this gen, giving you like one offense boost after a KO. Your first KO, and that's it, I think. See, that's a little experience I have with it. But as a Protean Mon, this one's just incredible. Whether it be as a fast offensive spiker, it has incredible coverage, it gets U-turn for priority, it can be physical, special, or mixed. It got access to Swords Dance and Trailblazer generation. I've seen a lot of like Torrent, Swords Dance, Trailblaze sets do really, really well alongside Liquidation, which it got this generation. But again, it really is going to function as that mixed or special wall breaker. It's going to get up spikes, it's going to U-turn around, it's going to be incredible at it. There's also a very slow metagame, so I think having Greninja in it is really, really healthy and nice for the game. So I'm super stoked on, Greninja. Very good Mon. Next up, we have Clawitzer. I'm going to put it at the bottom of C tier. I think it's better than Whiscash. Now I'll put it at the top of D tier. It's obviously not very bulky water. It's a slow, strong wall breaker. But I wouldn't ever really recommend drafting it, to be completely honest. Really, to be completely honest, I don't think it's really worth drafting. Just trying to think what it offers. I mean, again, there might be that one matchup where Clawitzer has no switch and you bring Specs and it kills something. Maybe even go AV. I'm sorry, Tone. Your boy here is not for me, personally. Then we have Volcanion. I'm actually going to go ahead and put Volcanion at the bottom of A tier. I'm not a big Volcanion guy, but I think having a water type that can burn things now is a very valuable and niche, characteristic that it does hold with Steam Eruption and technically Scald, which is probably not going to run very much. But very strong offensively between Fire and Water as it's typing plus like Sludge Bomb coverage, which is obviously very, very strong. Very bulky too, deceptively. It can flame charge as well as a way of sweeping. I think like Terra Volcanion could also be a really cool concept that nobody's really toyed with yet. So yeah, overall, again, a very, very cool Pokemon. I like Volcanion a lot. Let me check. Sorry, I just got a notification on my phone. Apologize. There we go. But yeah, again, very solid Pokemon overall. Next up is Marini Toxapex. I'm gonna go ahead and put Marini here in D tier. It does what Toxapex, just worse, and we're actually going to put Toxapex probably at the top of C tier objectively. Me personally, I'd have it in D tier or like bottom of C tier. I've never been a Toxapex guy. You all know this. For those of you who've been around the channel for a long time, I've never been a big Toxapex fan. I don't think it's a very good Pokemon at all. I think it's very exploitable and passive, and you kind of, see a trend here, at least in the draft league setting. Now, Toxapex is obviously much, much worse this generation, losing Scald, Knockoff, and having Recover nerfed. It becomes infinitely more exploitable, and I think it's a lot tougher to use. It's not just slap it on, regen, pivot out. It still obviously has some viability, very bulky, good defensive typing, recovery, T-Spikes, Toxic, all that stuff, grounded poison. But overall, obviously a big fall from grace for it. It's not as good as it used to be. So, yeah. Next up, we have Big Bruxish. I mean, it's an okay mediocre wall breaker with a meh speed tier and a meh defensive typing, no bulk. But it's a Bruxish. I actually think it's a cool design, so yeah. Next up we have Dreadnought. I'm actually going to put Dreadnought, let's say right here behind Floatzel. I think Floatzel's a better rain sweeper than Dreadnought. Dreadnought did get access to Shell Smash this gen. It actually swept me recently, but I still think overall, if you're going to draft Floatzel or Dreadnought, you draft Dreadnought and you draft Floatzel and you draft it with Rain. Dreadnought can do some other pretty interesting things, but really, that's kind of about it. From one mediocre Gen 8 Swift Swimmer to the next, we have Barraskewda, who I think is even worse than these other ones. Again, it's going to go in C tier kind of below these guys. I think if Barraskewda kept Flip Turn, it'd still be pretty incredible, but I think its lack of ability to grab momentum, which is really what made it good with that fast speed tier, and especially blazingly faster than the Rain, really just kind of brings it down a ton and just makes it not worth drafting over these other guys who have better coverage, or better options like Dreadnought with like Swords Dance or Shell Smash or Hazards, and Floatzel with, better sustainability and like stronger moves and things like that, like Wave Crash and things like that. Actually, I don't know if Barraskewda gets Wave Crash. Maybe I'm tripping. Maybe Barraskewda is better than the other ones, but I don't know. Drizzly, I don't know why I put this on my damn, on my tier maker. Drizzly going all the way down here. Same with Quagswell. We're gonna get those out of the way. I'll see y'all later. I'll put Quagswell above Drizzly, though, because Drizzly's an idiot. Look at that dumb, stupid idiot. Inteleon, though. I'm pretty excited for Inteleon to come back via home. I'll put him in B tier. I think he's a really fun, just, again, strong offensive water. Not very bulky by any stretch of the imagination, but with Sniper and Snipe Shot and, you know, Focus Energy, Scope Lens, that stuff like that, it could be pretty darn strong. Grabs momentum with U-Turn. Ice Beam plus, you know, water coverage is always going to be very solid in most matchups, and that's kind of all you need to break through your checks. I think this thing getting Nasty Plot would be so cool for it, and unfortunately it does not get it. But regardless, very strong wall breaker. Coolmon. Then we have Urshifu, Rapid Strike. We're going to go ahead and put my boy up here in S tier. I think I'm going to put him behind Slowking, though, at the bottom of S tier. But still, in S tier. Water Fighting, incredible offensive typing. Grabs momentum. Surging Strike is great. I think this thing with Punching Glove and Surging Strikes is going to be really solid, boosting up those Surging Strikes to a solid amount without locking it into them with a Choice Band. Gets Aqua Jet, gets Bulk Up, gets Ice Punch. It might even get Ice Spinner now. Close Combat, all that good stuff. Forces very specific switch-ins and is very good at getting in other strong wall breakers that beat what it beats, which is always going to be very solid in a Draft League format, especially with all the spikes that are running around this format right now. Very solid Pokemon overall. Big Urshifu fan. And we have the Basculegions. I'm going to go ahead and rank these separately. I'm going to go ahead and put Basculegion male in A tier and the female in S tier and then the female in A tier. The reason these guys are so high is Last Respects, especially with that adaptability boost potentially, or Swift Swim. This is when Rain's going to jump back into the meta. This thing with a Terra and Last Respect, I mean, I have it at the bottom of S tier now, but it realistically could just be absolutely broken. I don't have much of a frame of reference, but this Pokemon might have Last Respect's Complex Band on it. And if that's the case, I'd probably move them each down one tier. But I still think they're both great. Water Growth's great offensively. Again, adaptability and Swift Swim as abilities. The female can be a little bit more mixed, whereas the male is a strong physical attacker. But they're both great Pokemon, great Terra Captain options, and very solid wall breakers. Even AV mons can be very solid. So yeah, I'm definitely big on the Basculegions. I think they're going to be pretty darn good. Maybe even objectively broken. Not going to put them high enough yet because I don't have any experience with them. But I think they're going to be pretty darn good. Next up is a Pokemon I regard is the biggest noob killer in draft right now in Quaquaval. It's a Pokemon that newer players don't really have a way of stopping consistently once it gets its snowball rolling, and it gets it rolling fast. It really does get it rolling fast. With Moxie boosting its attack every time it gets a KO, and Aqua Step boosting its speed every time it's hit. It's very tough to deal with this thing alongside Ice Spinner, Close Combat, and Brave Bird coverage on top of that Aqua Step. It gets U-Turn, it gets Rapid Spin, it gets Roost, it gets Bulk Up, it gets Taunt. So it can function as like this cool stall breaker as well. Hazard Remover, Momentum Grabber, Endgame Win Con, all these crazy things. I think Quaquaval is very good at all of them. And again, absolute noob killer. Really cool mon. Wugtrio. This Pokemon is Dugtrio, but 80s. It's a Alolan Dugtrio, but 10 times worse. We're not going to even talk about Wugtrio. I refuse. Don't draft him. Not a good Pokemon. Then we have Dondozo. Another hot take. I think in draft, Dondozo is a C tier Pokemon. I'm going to be honest. For its price point, I don't think it's very worth it. It's very bulky on the physically defensive side. Unaware, but pretty dog-awful coverage. Very exploitable. Can be very passive in a lot of matchups. And when you know it's coming, you're not going to throw mindless setup into it. And there's going to be plenty of ways to beat it, even with your setup sometimes. So, I don't know. I'm not big on Dondozo. It's slow, fat, and passive. And, you know, there's just better Pokemon out there. There really is. Then we have Veluza. Veluza is also going to be very low tier for me. I'm going to go ahead and put it below Golduck. It has this cool signature move, Fillet Away, which is basically Shell Smash, but you have to give up half your health like Belly Drum. I'd just rather have Shell Smash so I could be Focus Sash or Winder or something like that. This thing's never really getting the opportunity to set up. It's very mediocre stats. Sharpness is a cool ability on it. But other than that, I mean, what does it offer? The answer is nothing. Next up, we have Palafin here. Palafin's got to go in S tier. It just has to go in S tier. There's no other ifs, ands, buts about it. This Pokemon is incredible. Just played one against Pokémon here in the PPR, and we really saw why this Pokemon is incredibly strong, powerful, and just absolutely destructive. It breaks as soon as you switch out and switch back in and get that 0 to hero going. It just absolutely nukes things. I mean, like banded close combat can like kill Rotom Wash, or just regular close combat just can 2-hit KO it because you have like Groudon attack stat. It's an incredible Pokemon. It gets flip turn for momentum, and it's very hard to deal with once it gets it rolling. You have to very much so dedicate a lot of specific prep just to make sure you're not swept by it, and especially if it can Terra. Jeez, not fun. Next up, we have Tatsugiri. I'm actually going to go ahead with Tatsugiri at the bottom of C tier. Not the bulkiest thing in the world, but Water Dragon is an incredible typing. Gets Nasty Plot plus Water Move, and Draco Meteor. Can Rapid Spin for speed boost or for, you know, getting rid of hazards, obviously. And has access to Recover. If its stats were better, it would be a pretty darn good Pokemon. Its stats aren't better. 2 more. We're almost there, guys. We have Walking Wake next. I'm going to go ahead and put an S tier. I think on Sun teams, this thing is an absolute monster in draft right now. I don't see how many teams switch into Specs, Terra Water, Hydro Steam in the Sun. It just seems like it kills everything unless you have a Water Absorb on, which to be fair, there's a decent amount of them in this gen, but unless you have that Water Absorb on, have fun switching into this thing. It can boost its speed or its special attack. It can even, you know, obviously Terra into things other than water, like Fairy. I think I've seen Fire before too on Sun, so I get off crazy flamethrowers. Even has access to Hurricane as coverage if you're not running it on Sun or Sun's gone or whatever it might be. So obviously Walking Wake is pretty incredible. I really want to try it out though. I really want to try out Walking Wake Sun. Really, really bad. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Then lastly, we have the Bundler. He's going to go up to the 2nd place in S tier. I personally think that Palafin's a bit better than him in the draft format, but just due to its little bit more versatility, but Bundle's obviously still incredible, right? Incredible speed tier, water plus ice, and ice being freeze drying is just perfect coverage. There's nothing that really switches into that dual stab combination. U-turn and flip turn for momentum, encore for, you know, utility purposes. The only downside to Bundle is that it has to rely on Hydro Pumps, and that's pretty tough. Other than that, it'd be an almost perfect Pokemon. And has terrible Spadef, I think it is. Really solid defense stat though, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, it's a Pokemon I need to try out myself. I think it's a bit overrated, but I still think it's the 2nd best offensive and just water on this list, value-wise. But yeah, that's going to be our tier list. Pretty quick one. We went over it pretty fast. There's not that many water types, but let me know what type you guys want to see next, potentially. Again, shouts to Liv for getting me this tier list maker right here. And yeah, with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.